is a great guy, Congressman Jim Banks. He's on the Armed Services Committee from Indiana. He served in the military, and he's got a lot to say about this subject. Congressman Jim Banks, welcome to the Savage Nation. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Michael, it's great to be with you.
Thanks, Jim. Now, you're a military veteran, and you make the case that the killing of Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is in some ways more significant than the killing of Osama bin Laden. How is that? Why do you say that?
Well, look, I don't take lightly the killing of Osama bin Laden. I mean, I served in Afghanistan. What Osama bin Laden did to this nation on 9/11 deserved everything that we gave tracking him down and killing him. That was significant. But what I mean by this, Michael, is that we killed Osama bin Laden out of retribution, and rightly so. But at the point that we killed Osama bin Laden, he wasn't relevant. He wasn't he was relevant, but he wasn't as relevant to Al Qaeda as Baghdadi was to ISIS. Now, Baghdadi was not just the spiritual head of ISIS. He declared himself as the caliph, but he was also, more significantly so, he was the chief recruiter for ISIS. So at the point that we killed him, he was still, sort of think of him as a field general. He was still out there recruiting new ISIS fighters. He was recruiting kids to come and fight for ISIS because many of them thought he was immortal. They thought he's the caliph. He inspired them to come and join them. So what President Trump did and what the media does not want to talk about, what you're not going to hear anywhere in the mainstream media, is the significance of killing Baghdadi as the cutting off the snake of ISIS, the chief recruiter, and being one of their major sources of inspiration moving forward. It's a very significant moment that sadly you haven't heard hardly anything in the last 3 days about the significance of.
He was a serial rapist. He killed tens of thousands of people. He killed more Shia, I understand, than in all battles with the United States. And yet I call them names. I can't help myself. It's how I grew up. I call the opposition names. I have such contempt for the Adam Schiffs and the Pelosi's who are hiding what was done here. This is a great victory for freedom. It's a great victory for women. It's a great victory for West. And it's a great victory for Shia Muslims who suffered so badly under this guy, and yet they're sweeping it under the rug because they don't want to give Trump a modicum of credit for this.
Not just that, Michael, but you heard the media reports after the killing about the president's description of the raid. This is really important. The reason that President Trump described the gory details of the raid is to show just how much of a coward this individual was. That Baghdadi was mortal. That we did go hunt him down, and the reason that the president described that is because he was still recruiting many new ISIS fighters into the fold, and it sent a message that's why that description was important, and the president's even flirted with the idea of releasing video coverage of the raid. I say bring it on.
I wish he would. I would love that to be circulated throughout the world so these young jihadists from around the world will come to understand that they, too, will be tracked down if they engage in this kind of insanity. By the way, Mr. Congressman, I want to know, do we know which division of the military conducted this raid? Was it Green Berets? Who was it?
Well, I serve on the Armed Services Committee, and we're often briefed in classified settings. I have to be careful about what I say. I mean, I think the president has released more and more of the details. And Michael, I just walked out of the White House where I met with the president along with a group of members of the Republican Study Committee, and I can see already that the president is, because there's been so little attention paid to the significance of this moment in our fight against ISIS. I can tell that the president is getting eager to release more detail. So I imagine that will happen in the days to come.
Okay, because we were hearing it was one group, then we hear it was another, and I know you can only say so much. I see the significance of this because I read a very detailed article in the Jerusalem Post about Abu Bakr Baghdadi. The man was a serial rapist, which is what women in America need to know, what he did to women. Have they forgotten the American woman who was captured by ISIS and what they did to her?
Well, the media won't report any of these facts, and that's the incredible aspect of this really important moment on President Trump's watch. I mean, what you have to realize, too, is that just like when we killed Osama bin Laden, there were several contingency plans laid out in front of the president. And this president, he cares so much about our men and women in uniform. He doesn't want to send them into harm's way unnecessarily. So the president was really courageous in choosing this particular moment to kill Baghdadi. The particular plan, it was well executed. In fact, just in the White House moments ago, we were talking about the dog and the story about the dog and the courage, and even the dog that was involved in the raid. But this was a well executed raid with many layers. Of course, the men and women in uniform deserve a lot of credit, but so does our commander in chief.
Okay, Congressman Jim Banks, military veteran, just came from the White House briefing on this. Can't say much more, but I want to read one paragraph for the world to hear on the show today. All the while, Baghdadi was busy raping women. This was not incidental to his caliphate. It was the main driving force behind it. ISIS was an empire of rape. It sold itself abroad as a brand promising young men from Central Asia to the Caribbean a chance to come to Syria and Iraq and rape and harm local people. It promised slaves and booty. Baghdadi raped Yazidi girls, and his forces acquired the kidnapped American Kyla Mueller. Why is it that Nancy Pelosi won't give Trump even credit for this when this is one of the greatest victories of our modern times in terms of a military victory? I certainly see it as that.
It's Nancy Pelosi. It's the Washington Post. It's the mainstream media. They don't want to give this president any credit where credit is due. But Michael, I talked to Hoosiers back in my district, and they know it for what it is. This is a significant moment of this president continuing to keep his commitment that he made on the campaign trail to defeat ISIS. And this is a significant moment where we killed the leader and the biggest inspirational force behind ISIS. I imagine over the
Right. He wasn't just an ordinary Muslim fighting a holy war. He was the worst of the worst. He was a serial rapist, and he ran an empire of rape. The article is astounding. It's in the Jerusalem Post, and I put it on michaelsavage.com for all the world to try and read this. Congressman, before you leave us, you're a Hoosier. Tell us what's going on in terms of the Democrats. They're trying to, okay, Trump said, we dare you to call for an impeachment vote, meaning that we're going to go ahead with this charade. And Pelosi took the bait, and on Thursday they're going to hold a hearing. It's not an actual vote on whether to impeach or not. What actually is it?
It's a charade. I mean, this is a make it up as you go process. And what I hear from my constituents at home, my friends, my family members, they see through it. This is inspiring them more than ever to stand with this president. I know this president doesn't want to go through this. He would prefer not to go through the impeachment baloney process that we're going through currently. But this rough road that we're going to go through, Michael, I believe is going to cement his reelection. It's going to win back the House majority. We're going to come back stronger than ever to deliver on this president's agenda in his second term.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Congressman. There are many Democrat congresspeople who came from districts that voted for President Trump, who are somewhat conservative, who may not be very happy with Pelosi's crucifixion of Trump. What do you think in terms of internal polling? You think this could backfire on them?
I have no doubt about it. I mean, the polling speaks for itself, and the impeachment process, this ordeal that we're going through is not popular in the swing districts that are going to determine the majority. I mean, I have colleagues who was just with a colleague from the state of Ohio, meeting with the president. The president asked how he was doing in Ohio, and my colleague said, "You're more popular today than when you won Ohio in 2016." It's because the American people are fed up with what they're seeing coming out of from this Democrat majority led by Nancy Pelosi as they march over the cliff. But Michael, I talked to Democrat colleagues in private, some of them that are more moderate, that come from swing districts. They know they've gone too far. They've gone over the cliff, but there's no going back now. And that's what I mean by saying the president ultimately and the country is ultimately going to benefit. As ugly as this looks today, it's going to reelect this president, and we're going to have a great opportunity to deliver in the second term on an agenda that the American people have expected us to.
I think most middle Americans have seen through the charade. They've had enough of it. And I believe we could see the equivalent of the 1960s when the left also got out of control, thought that they had power, and overplayed their hand. And it led, frankly, to a Republican victory like they had not seen in 50 years.
I fully agree. We see it in the polling. The president's numbers are on the rise in the states that matter most. And I'm involved in some of these efforts to win back some of the seats in contested districts, to win back the majority. And Michael, that's what we're seeing more and more of every day. I'm hopeful and optimistic as I've ever been. And that's why, back to the Baghdadi killing. I mean, this is a significant moment that while the left coast and the East Coast, the West Coast, while they don't want to talk about it, Middle America sees it for what it is. It's a big victory for this president, and a well-deserved that's going to play out on electorally on Election Day for him, too.
I think President Trump deserves a statue in his honor, if not a Nobel Prize, for wiping out this scourge against humanity. To me, he was the incarnation of Hitler. When you conduct a jihad like this and rape tens of thousands of young girls, and you evade and you elude and you can't be touched, and you're seen as some kind of mythical figure, and you're recruiting young psychotics from around the world because he's saying, join us in our jihad. You're going to get girls, you're going to rape them, you're going to get slaves. And now Trump, under his watch, he's tracked them down and killed them. This is amazing to me, and I think the story needs to be told more thoroughly, and I'm doing the best I can, Congressman Jim Banks, and I certainly appreciate what you're doing in Congress and what you're doing not only in Indiana, but for America. And as a military veteran, we all salute you for being with us on the Savage Nation. Thank you very much.